it in the jar and get a big scoop of it and then to eat it. I had come in late. It was a saving grace. Nothing happened. No one died. So I'm going to suspend that mystery right there. But I want you to understand what was happening is that he was normalizing behavior. And the more that I researched this, the more chilling it got. He was normalizing behavior like Jim Jones, normalized behavior. And because I was familiar with Jim Jones and I remember being a kid and hearing my mom talk about that whole thing that happened, I realized that first it was peanut butter and nothing happens to you. And then it's Kool-Aid and you're not here anymore. So I took the scoop because I didn't want to draw attention to myself and I wiped it under my seat and then I figured out my escape plan. So it has been said that absolute power corrupts absolutely. I really like this quote from George Lucas. He says, "The story being told in Star Wars is a classic one. Every few hundred years, the story is retold because we have a tendency to do the same things over and over again. Power corrupts when you're in charge. You start doing things that you think are right, but they are actually not." And so it got me to thinking about another cult leader and the similarities he had to Warren. I talked about Jim Jones, and so I did a little research. And I want to share, I knew the basic story, like most of us know, about the Kool-Aid and the mass suicide and the shooting of the congressman that was sent there to intervene and all of that. But what I didn't know was this, that Jones had a childhood friend, and his childhood friend both claimed that his father, Jim Jones's father, was an alcoholic and was associated with the Ku Klux Klan, very much like Warren's father. Jones, however, found himself to sympathize with the country's African-American repressed community due to his own experiences as a social outcast. He later recounted how he and his father had clashed because of an issue of race because he had a black friend in the house and he refused to speak to his father for many, many years, very much like Warren, because of his love of all people in the community. When I was reading this, I began to think, my God, this is so much like Warren. I don't know if he didn't read this and then say like hashtag cult leader goals. I started to get into this like topsy-turvy place where I thought, is he fashioning his life after this person or was this really his life? I only know what he told me. So that's one thing. And then another thing that happens is social and political clout in the community. And what happened with Jim Jones is that he began to really speak up for the NAACP and the Urban League. And he yelled for his audience to be more militant. And he was very upset about how everything was going with the world. And he was speaking out against it. And he said, "Let my people go." And everybody cheered. He was already kind of building himself and ascending. And during this time, he helped to integrate churches and restaurants and the telephone company and the police department and the theater and an amusement park and a Methodist hospital. And after swastikas were painting on the homes of 2 African-American families, Jones personally walked the neighborhood, comforting local blacks and counseling white families not to move in order to prevent white flight. He also set up stings to catch restaurants refusing to serve black customers. And he wrote to American Nazi leaders and asked for their responses to the media. He refused to be moved. He was accidentally once placed into a black hospital and he refused to be moved out of that hospital and instead began to make the beds and empty the bedpans of the black patients. And so he gained acclaim. The political pressures resulting from Jones' actions caused the hospital officials to desegregate the wards. Think for a second. This guy who we know, and I'm not trying to paint him in a new light. I want you to understand how power corrupts. He started out with good intentions. He started out wanting to help people. And I'm not just saying it because it was quote unquote my people. He just started out wanting to help. He adopted people, various children from all nationalities. And that's how he began his rainbow culture and rainbow tribe, as he called his group that followed him. But when given absolute power, he turned into the worst of himself. And it reminds me of Lord of the Rings with Gollum and everybody that gets their hands on the ring and how they turn into the worst of themselves. And that's what power does. And that's what happens when there are no checks and balances in a group or church like that in life, really. But in a group or church especially, that's what can happen. So there's Jim Jones doing all this kind of humanitarian work and building himself up. And at some point in the 70s, some governor, I believe it was Willie Brown, Jerry Brown, he spoke at a dinner and he says, quote, "What you see every day when you look at the Jim Jones should be in the mirror. In these early morning hours, you should see a combination of Martin Luther King Jr., Angela Davis, Albert Einstein, and Chairman Mao." So there are these great leaders and giving him accolades and telling him how wonderful he is and how he's the embodiment of some of the greatest leaders of our time. Harvey Milk, who was the first out gay activist and also politician, spoke at a political address in several rallies that he had. And he wrote to Jones after visiting the temple, quote, "Reverend Jim, it may take a day to come back down from the high that I reached today. I found something dear today. I found a sense of being that makes up for all the hours and energy I have placed into the civil rights fight. I found what you wanted me to find. I shall be back, for I can never leave." That last line haunted me. I found what you wanted me to find. That is the danger of a charismatic cult leader. You can find anything in him. And Jim Jones often recommended that people refer to him as God. He said, if you want God, I'm your God. If you want a dad, I'm your dad. If you want love, I'm your love. If you want a lover, I'm your lover. And that is how he appealed to everything. And so it kind of terrified me to read those words from Harvey Milk. I thought, I found what you wanted me to find? That's insane. I know now that that's insane. The common theme with the inductees of my cult, though, is that everyone was broken. Everyone was vulnerable. Everyone was coming off of broken relationships or parents that had thrown them out or divorces that were impending. What I learned about myself at that time is that I am strong. Upon talking to Cynthia 15 years later, she said, "You were always the strong one. You really started an exodus," she said. It's odd to me in moments of trial that you can view yourself in that way. I never felt that way, guys. So I wasn't like this brave person. I just was me, precocious Monette, who is a monkey in the Chinese zodiac, and that means I'm naturally inquisitive, and who is a thinker in life, and that means I want to know. I want to get to the bottom of things, and who is an intuitive and an empath. So I was feeling this soup of energy, and this is not right. But here I was trying to prove to who? I don't know who, that I should be there. And my mother actually had to come up, and I didn't want to leave. I had moved out from the discipleship incubator, and I had bought my first house, and I was still working at this place, but saying I'm not part of this situation, and I was still brainwashed. And she kind of came in a way that only mothers can and snapped me out of it. And I didn't leave right immediately, but I did leave, and I did end up back here. So I've come away from the experience with a lot more wariness for the world. I have had coworkers and friends who have called it paranoia a lot. They're like, "Monette, why are you so paranoid?" And they don't understand that I suffer with flashbacks and PTSD from that situation. Up until now, I've never disclosed it. So they just see me questioning the motives of people and overthinking things. And it's because in order to survive, I had to be in that mode. And so sometimes, even though I'm a spiritual person, I find myself there wondering about the true intentions of a person and realizing that maybe a situation has triggered me. And I'm so grateful for some therapy and for some help that I had that helped me to walk through it and understand the difference. But they don't understand because I didn't disclose it. I just let them usually think what they want. But I know that I had this experience to teach about it. It is why we are here in this time and space reality, to learn and to teach. What I have learned is that there is great power in not fitting in. There's such great power in not making everyone comfortable. As a rule, I kind of am in this life and I make people uncomfortable. I make them uncomfortable because sometimes I'm reading their energy and looking right through them and it disturbs them. It's unnerving. I make them uncomfortable because I'm too tall, I'm too black, I'm too big, I'm too outspoken, I'm too smart, I'm not smart enough, I'm too quiet, I'm too black, I'm too white for some people. So I have really had to accept that that's who I am. And I ask you listeners, who are you? in your life? What thing have you been told maybe that you should tone down, that you shouldn't be, that you should go along, you shouldn't kick against the pricks, that you know that God created you here for this moment to help somebody else grow, to help somebody else evolve? That's my purpose. I make people uncomfortable. And I now don't go out with that intention, but I understand that if it's happening, I don't take it personally anymore, because it means that in some ways I'm doing my job, because I'm asking a question. I'm pushing against a tradition, and I'm saying, what's really going on here? And I've learned that that's okay. There is a great power in asking questions, listeners, and not blindly going along with a program. I am no longer ashamed of my experience in the cult because I made it out alive. For anyone listening, I want you to know that if you're in a situation that feels like that, even if it's just an abusive relationship, and on my heart, I want you to know that there is a brunette woman that's listening and you have 3 kids. I don't know this person, listeners. I've never talked to this person. This is just coming into me spiritually. There's a brunette woman with 3 kids, and this isn't a cult situation that you're in, but it is an abusive situation. And I want you to start to formulate your escape. I don't know who you are. I don't know if we'll ever cross paths, but I feel it so strongly in my spirit to tell you it's okay. You're fine, and you're going to make it. My book, Little Seed, A Sprouting Story, really was born of the experiences that I had at this cult. I will say this, the cult leader's wife was very talented with children. We all have our talents, no matter what positions we are in our life. I learned a great deal from her that I carried on and earned me many certificates and accolades and other teaching positions in different places. So nothing is wasted. But what I came away with was an understanding of children, but I also came away with an understanding of how to stand in your truth, even when you're different. And in Little Seed, it talks about being different. And I remember sitting at my desk in corporate America a few years ago, looking at a grapefruit that had been sitting on my desk too long, started to sprout inside. And there was this little seed that was a little sprout. And if I can find the picture, I'll post it on Facebook today so you can understand. And it was growing in spite of its situation, and it was developing into this little thing that could be rooted into a grapefruit tree inside of an enclosed grapefruit. And I sat there, and Little Seed flowed through me, meaning I wrote that book within a few minutes sitting at my desk because it reminded me of the story of my life in the cult. I was different. I was told that I would never accomplish some of the things that I have. I was told that I would never leave and that I would never amount to anything. And in spite of it all, I've started to grow into a tree. There's a little seed in all of us. Never let anybody stomp that out. Never let anybody tell you you can't think for yourself. We are thinking people. We are here to ask questions. If you know anybody that's in this situation, I would recommend that, like cancer, early detection is the best prevention. Once you get too far in, sometimes things can be difficult, though people do leave. We're watching it now. On that series I started talking about at the beginning of the show with Leah Remini, people that were in for 30 years leave. There's always hope. As long as there is life, there is hope. So today I want to leave on a lighter note. I want you to know that you are loved, you are heard, no matter your situation. I pulled a few cards, and I just want to give a quick reading. It's a numerology reading this week. And the first card that I pulled was self-love. I think we kind of know what that means. Fallujah. I'm not just telling you. I didn't pull them to correspond with my reading. I pulled them as soon as I got into the studio. Self-love. Take care of yourself, dear ones. Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. Listen and honor yourself this week and in the weeks to come. The next one was leadership. Like my friend Cynthia said to me, you were the first to leave. And man, I'll tell you, I struggled, guys. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I was brainwashed. I was programmed. I was concerned that I was making the wrong move. I didn't think my life would amount to anything. I didn't think I would make it without them because that's what I was taught. So take some leadership. Step out on a limb. Trust yourself. You never know what you can accomplish. And the last one is teaching and learning. I promise you, I did not pick these to line up with my message. That's when I know I'm in synchronicity. That's what this experience was about, was teaching and learning. For years, I have kept the lesson to myself because I didn't know what people would think of me. I didn't know if they would think I was weak. I felt weak. I didn't know if they would think I was crazy. I felt crazy. But I know now that whatever we go through, we have a responsibility to teach about it. Maya Angelou said, when you learn, teach, and when you teach,